Have you ever felt like your prayers were being ignored? Have you ever faced deep pain and not known how to overcome it? Hannah's story is a powerful reflection of how God hears even our quietest cries. A woman marked by infertility and neglect, Hannah faced the pain of not being able to have children, something that made her feel invisible and desperate. But her pain did not destroy her, it led her to cry out to the Lord with faith and perseverance. And in doing so, Hannah discovered that even in the greatest difficulties, God has the power to transform our pain into blessings. Her story is not just about the struggle of being a mother, it is about the struggle of trusting a God who has the solution to our greatest challenges. If you have ever gone through moments of pain or waiting, prepare yourself to see how Hannah found peace and divine answer in the midst of the storm. Before we begin, I want to invite you to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any inspiring stories like Hannah's. If you've ever felt like your prayers were being ignored or faced deep pain, this video is for you. Here, we'll explore how God heard Hannah's cry and how He can turn your pain into a blessing. Don't miss out, subscribe now and follow this journey of faith and hope. Imagine a small village called Ramah, where green hills stretch as far as the eye can see. It is a simple place, where life is marked by work in the fields, shepherding, and traditional celebrations that bring families together. In this peaceful setting, there lived a man named Elkanah. He was respected in his community and came from an important lineage. He was from the tribe of Ephraim, a descendant of Levi. Elkanah had 2 wives, something that was common in the culture of the time. The first was Hannah, a woman known for her kindness, devotion to God, and a compassionate heart. The other was Peninnah, a strong woman, but who was often harsh in her words and actions. Although Elkanah's home was wealthy and had plenty of material goods, there was a shadow that hung over his family. Hannah, despite all the love Elkanah gave her, could not have children. This reality was especially difficult for Hannah, because in Israelite culture, motherhood was seen as a divine blessing and a sign of honor for women. The fact that she could not conceive children caused Hannah to carry a deep pain, as if something essential was missing in her life. Peninnah, on the other hand, was the mother of several children and, perhaps out of envy of Elkanah's special love for Hannah, she constantly provoked her rival. With cutting words, she mocked Hannah's sterility, transforming her sadness into an even more painful wound. Peninnah's provocations were not just a passing annoyance, they were like arrows that struck Hannah's heart, often leaving her in tears and without the strength to react. Elkanah, seeing Hannah's suffering, did what he could to comfort her. He gave her double portions of the sacrificial offerings, a gesture that demonstrated his love and care. He said tenderly, "Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you not eat? Why are you so sad? Am I not better to you than 10 sons?" Despite her sincere words, Hannah could not find comfort. There was a pain that only God could alleviate. Ramah, with its tranquil landscapes and peaceful routine, was the backdrop for this story full of emotional and spiritual tensions. Although everything seemed calm on the outside, Hannah's heart was in turmoil. She was experiencing an internal conflict between her faith in God and the pain of her reality. But it was precisely in this scenario of struggle and trial that God would begin to act in a powerful way. What seemed to be a place of suffering and frustration would become the starting point for one of the most beautiful and inspiring stories in the Bible. Hannah didn't know it, but her life was about to change, and Ramah would be remembered not only as the village where she suffered, but as the place where a divine plan began that would impact an entire nation. And so, the stage was set. Ramah, with its hills, its simplicity, and its families, would be the stage for a story of faith, perseverance, and divine response. Every year Elkanah took his family to Shiloh, where the tabernacle of the Lord was set up. It was an important time to worship God, offer sacrifices, and renew their faith. The journey was long, with dirt roads and landscapes that reflected the simplicity of life in the interior of Israel. Hannah traveled silently, lost in thought. The constant presence of Peninnah and her children made the journey emotionally challenging, as Peninnah took every opportunity to tease her about her infertility. Still, Hannah remained steadfast, knowing that Shiloh was the place where she could present herself before God with her supplications. Upon arrival, the sacred surroundings of Shiloh contrasted with the pain in Hannah's heart. The tabernacle loomed large, and the aroma of burnt sacrifices filled the air. Elkanah divided the portions of the sacrifice with his family, giving Hannah a special portion as a sign of his love. However, Peninnah's sarcastic words did not leave Hannah alone, bringing tears to her eyes. Even in her sadness, Hannah saw the trip to Shiloh as a unique opportunity. It was there that she felt the closeness of God, there where she placed her hopes and prayers. Although the return home was always marked by the pain of not having seen her miracle happen, Hannah continued her journey of faith. Shiloh was more than a destination, it was a symbol of her persistence in seeking the only one who could transform her story. After once again enduring Peninnah's taunts and the weight of her own pain, Hannah found a moment of solitude in the Lord's tabernacle in Shiloh. With her heart crushed by years of waiting and frustration, she approached the sanctuary. There, before God, she let out everything she carried inside her. Hannah knelt down and began to pray as she had never done before. Her words were not heard, her lips barely moved as tears ran freely down her face. She wept deeply, as if pouring out every bit of pain accumulated over the years. There was no one by her side, but she knew that the God who had heard her so many times in the silence of her home was also there. She cried out sincerely, without reservation, pouring out her heart before God. It was then that she made a solemn vow, something that showed how much she trusted the Lord. Hannah said, "Lord of hosts, if you will look on the affliction of your servant and remember me and give me a son, I will give him to you all the days of his life, and no razor will come upon his head." Her cry was more than a desperate plea for a child. It was a total surrender, a declaration that her greatest joy would be to see God's purpose fulfilled in the life she so longed to bear. Hannah did not seek a son just for herself, but to give him back to the Lord as a sign of her gratitude and devotion. As she prayed, the priest Eli watched her from afar. He saw her lips moving without making a sound and, perhaps not understanding the depth of the moment, thought Hannah was drunk. He approached her and rebuked her. "How long will you remain drunk? Put away the wine." Hannah, even in her grief, responded respectfully, "No, my lord. I am a woman in deep distress. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, I am pouring out my soul before the Lord. Do not think that I am a wicked woman, I am praying here because of my great anguish and sorrow." Eli, realizing his mistake, changed his stance. He blessed her, saying, "Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant you what you have asked for." These words were like balm to Hannah's heart. For the first time in a long time, she felt relief, as if God had begun to answer her prayer at that very moment. Hannah stood up, wiped away her tears, and returned to her family with a peace she could not explain. Her cry was not just a moment of despair, it was a turning point in her life. There, before God's altar, Hannah demonstrated unwavering faith and a heart willing to put God's plans above her own desires. And even though she didn't know how or when, Hannah believed that the God she served was capable of transforming her pain into joy and her shame into honor. That day, Hannah's cry rose to heaven, and the Lord heard it. Something was about to change, and the faith of this persevering woman would be rewarded in an extraordinary way. And now, I want to know from you, have you ever gone through a moment of pain and despair in which, like Hannah, you felt that you no longer had the strength to carry on? What was your experience like when you completely surrendered your heart to God in prayer? Leave your comment below, sharing your feelings and thoughts about Hannah's cry. Let's reflect together on how we can find peace and trust in God even in the most difficult times. After her fervent prayer in the tabernacle, something changed in Hannah. She stood up with a different countenance, as if she had laid her burden at the feet of the Lord. The inexplicable peace that filled her heart was only the beginning of God's answer. Even though there was no immediate evidence of change, Hannah knew that God had heard her cry. When she and Elkanah returned home to Ramah, everyday life returned to normal, but hope now filled Hannah's days. She continued to trust in the Lord, and before long, the impossible happened. Hannah conceived a son. Imagine the joy that filled that household. For Hannah, every moment of her pregnancy was a living reminder of God's faithfulness. The God who saw her pain also saw her faith and, in due time, responded with a blessing that would mark her life forever. When the baby was born, Hannah held him in her arms with tears of joy and gratitude. She named him Samuel, a name loaded with meaning, because she wanted everyone to know that he was asked of the Lord. Each time she said the boy's name, Hannah remembered that God had not only heard her prayer, but had answered it in a miraculous way. But Hannah's story didn't stop with Samuel's birth. She had made a vow, and she was a woman of her word. From the beginning, she knew that her son would not only be a personal answer to her prayers, but a life dedicated to God. Even so, Hannah cherished every moment with Samuel during his early years, lovingly caring for him and preparing him for the special purpose the Lord had for his life. The fulfillment of God's plan for Hannah wasn't just about having a son, it was about showing that He is faithful to turn tears into joy, pain into purpose. Hannah, the woman who had once wept silently in the tabernacle, now laughed alongside her son, testifying to the goodness of the Lord in his life. God's answer to Hannah not only changed her story, but also the story of Israel. The boy who was born through her prayer would be a key part of God's plan for His nation. God, as always, used the unlikely to accomplish the extraordinary. In fulfilling her vow to the Lord, Hannah took Samuel to the tabernacle at Shiloh. Accompanied by Elkanah, she presented the boy to the priest Eli, declaring with conviction, "My Lord, I am the woman who stood here with you praying to the Lord. This is the boy for whom I prayed, and the Lord has granted my request. Therefore I now dedicate him to the Lord. He will be the Lord's all his days, Instead of sadness at giving up her son, Hannah felt profound gratitude. At that moment, she lifted her voice in a song of praise, extolling God's greatness and righteousness. My heart rejoices in the Lord my strength is exalted. My mouth exalts itself over my enemies, for I rejoice in your deliverance. She began, acknowledging that the Lord had turned her humiliation into honor. She continued to extol God's power to change circumstances. The bow of the mighty is broken, but the weak are clothed with strength. Those who were full now labor for food, but the hungry have no more need. He raises the poor from the dust and sets them among princes. Hannah glorified the Lord as the sovereign God who rules with justice and transforms the lives of those who seek Him. Her song was a testimony of faith, proclaiming God's goodness not only in her life, but for all His people. In closing, Hannah left Samuel in the care of Eli, confident that God, who had answered her prayer, would continue to care for her son and fulfill His purposes. With a heart full of peace and gratitude, Hannah returned home, knowing that her story was now a living testimony of God's faithfulness. If you are connecting with Hannah's story and see the power of prayer and trust in God, don't forget to leave a like. This helps us continue to bring you more inspiring stories like this one. Like and share with someone who also needs this message of faith and hope. After Hannah gave Samuel to the priest Eli, the boy began living in the tabernacle, where he was trained to serve God. Although still a young boy, Samuel helped with daily tasks such as lighting the lamps, preparing the utensils, and keeping the tabernacle clean. The simple routine was filled with meaning, and Samuel did everything with devotion. Eli, the priest, watched Samuel fondly, recognizing his faith and dedication to God. Samuel, even as a child, grew in wisdom and favor with the Lord. One night, while Samuel was lying in bed, he heard a voice calling his name. Thinking it was Eli, he ran to the priest, but Eli told him to return. When it happened again, Eli realized that it was God calling the boy and instructed Samuel to respond, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." When God's voice called him again, Samuel responded obediently. It was then that God revealed to Samuel a judgment on Eli's house because of his son's disobedience. Although it was a difficult message, Samuel accepted it, and the next day he told Eli everything the Lord had said. Eli humbly accepted God's will. This event marked the beginning of Samuel's calling as a prophet. He continued to grow, becoming recognized in Israel as a faithful and obedient leader of God. His life in the tabernacle prepared him to fulfill a pivotal role in Israel's history. After fulfilling her vow and giving Samuel to the Lord, Hannah experienced God's blessing in abundance. Although she dedicated her son to God, He did not leave her without reward. The Lord, in His faithfulness, gave her more children, 3 sons and 2 daughters, demonstrating that His blessing goes beyond expectations. Hannah, who had previously lived in pain and barrenness, was now a woman full of joy and gratitude. God also blessed Samuel. As he grew up in the tabernacle, serving the Lord, God continued to speak to him, making Samuel a great prophet in Israel. Every year, Hannah visited Samuel, bringing him new clothes and gifts. Each visit was an opportunity to see her son grow into a man of God, which brought her great joy. God's blessing upon Hannah was not only the abundance of children, but also the restoration of her faith and trust. Her story is a testament to God's power to turn pain into blessings, and how He honors those who sincerely seek Him. Samuel's impact on Israel was profound and lasting. As a prophet, he was used by God to guide the nation through difficult times. When the people asked for a king, Samuel anointed Saul as Israel's first king. However, when Saul turned away from God, Samuel rebuked him and announced that God would reject him as king. Samuel also played a crucial role in anointing David as the future king, an act that would change the history of Israel, as David would become one of the nation's greatest kings. In addition to his role as a spiritual leader and prophet, Samuel was a judge of Israel, guiding the people back to God and leading with integrity. His impact was not only political, but also spiritual, as he helped reinforce the importance of listening to and obeying God. Samuel's life was marked by courage, faithfulness, and obedience, and his impact continued to influence Israel for generations to come. Hannah, marked by the pain of barrenness, became a powerful witness to God's faithfulness. Her story is an example of trust and perseverance, showing that even in the most difficult situations, God is able to reverse any circumstance. In her anguish, Hannah prayed fervently in the temple, asking for a son and, above all, for divine intervention. When God answered her prayer with the birth of Samuel, Hannah not only celebrated the blessing, but fulfilled her promise, giving her son back to the Lord. Her song of praise, recorded in 1 Samuel 2, is an expression of gratitude and recognition of God's sovereignty. She declared that God is her strength and that He exalts the humble and humbles the proud. Hannah's testimony teaches us to trust in God at all times and to understand that all blessings come from His hands. Her life continues to inspire those who seek God with faith and sincerity. Did you like Hannah's story? It teaches us so much about perseverance, faith, and surrender to God. I want to know your opinion. What touched you most about Anna's journey? How do you see her faith in the face of difficulties? Leave a comment below and share your thoughts with us. And so, Hannah's story shows us that, no matter how difficult our pain may be, God is always attentive to our cries. She teaches us that, even in moments of anguish, it is possible to trust in God, because He always has a purpose for our lives, and His answer comes at the right time. When Hannah trusted, prayed, and surrendered herself into God's hands, she experienced an incredible transformation, and just like Hannah, we can believe that our prayers will also be heard. Hannah's story is a reminder that, in the midst of suffering, God is working in us and, in the end, He surprises us with His faithfulness and generosity. May we, like Hannah, find our strength and our solution in God, even when everything seems impossible. If you were inspired by Hannah's story and want to continue receiving more messages of faith and hope like this one, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos and follow all the stories that can transform your life. Subscribe now and come be a part of this journey.